Mike Conley holds the title of being the most underrated player in the last decade. Every time you have a conversation about the best point guards in the league or something like that, Conley is always an afterthought. And it makes sense too. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna talk about Mike Conley. But before we get into the video, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsors at Global Test Markets. It's an easy way to make some quick cash and win some rewards, like an Amazon gift card for example. I've tried it, all you gotta do is take some surveys to earn some rewards. Check out the link in the description to start earning. Thank you to Global Test Market for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's get started. Throughout his NBA career, he's never made an All-Star team, he's never made any All-NBA teams, not even third-team All-NBA. His only notable accolade is making second-team All-Defense in 2013 and winning the NBA Sportsmanship Award a couple of times. That's all. He never even made the All-Rookie teams. In my opinion, he's probably the best player in NBA history who's never been an All-Star and never made an All-NBA team. You know, the word underrated has been used a lot to describe players who don't get the recognition they deserve. While many hardcore fans know who Mike Conley is, the majority of casual fans do not. Part of the reason is because, well, he spent his entire career playing in a small market. And part of it is also because he's not the most exciting player to watch. If you look at the other top point guards in the league, they're way more exciting. Steph Curry, Westbrook, Dame, Kyrie, John Wall, Kemba Walker, they're all better and they're more fun to watch. Defensively, Conley is probably better than all of them, but nobody really wants to watch defense. He's a great player and he's been a great player for a long time now, but he's never done anything to make himself stand out. However, Conley has experienced this his entire life, even before entering the NBA. Before getting drafted in 2007, he wasn't even the best player on his own college team. At Ohio State, Greg Oden was getting all of the attention and he was arguably the top prospect in the nation. Even back then, Conley was overshadowed and underrated. Over a decade later, Oden is long gone and Conley is still playing at a high level. Although he's had some problems with injuries too. Heck, he's even overshadowed by his own father, Mike Conley Sr., a track and field athlete who won the gold medal in the triple jump in the 1992 Olympics. He has one of the craziest dunks of all time, even dunking from behind the free throw line at 6'1". That's insane. Sadly, it looks like those genes didn't pass down to Conley Jr. Anyway, back in his early days, he was always a decent shooter, from three, from mid-range, but he had his struggles. His handles and dribbling skills were very poor for a point guard. Listed at only 6'1", 175 pounds, there were times where he'd get utterly abused on defense. Because of his small stature, he had trouble finishing at the rim. In his first 3 seasons, he took about 1/3 of his shots at the rim, but only converted them at a 54% rate. That looks like a good percentage on paper, but at the rim, that's well below average. By 2011, Conley's game started to slowly improve. He started to figure out how to finish at the rim with both hands, developing a nice right-handed floater. That was a huge reason why his efficiency at the rim started to skyrocket as he started converting on over 60% of his shots there. His playmaking ability started to get better and his overall game improved drastically. Defensively, he became a tough defender with quick hands, which made up for his lack of size, as he had multiple seasons of averaging over 2 steals a game. After the Grizzlies traded away Rudy Gay in 2013, Conley became their second option behind Zach Randolph. This was a great opportunity as he helped the Grizzlies reach the Western Conference Finals, but individually he struggled a lot in the playoffs. During the regular season, he was always solid, but by the time the playoffs rolled around, he usually didn't play well. In my opinion, I feel like the whole underrated label gets used too much with him because the reason he's overlooked is because of stuff like this. From 2013 to 2015, in the playoffs, he averaged like 16 points and 7 assists per game, which is about the same as his regular season numbers, but his efficiency dropped significantly. His three-point shot especially, it always dipped during the playoffs. However, that all changed in the 2016 to 17 season. In the 2016 offseason, Conley signed a massive 5-year, $153 million contract. At the time, it was the biggest contract in NBA history, and of course, he got some flack. Conley was a good player, but he was never an elite player. The Grizzlies were also heading in a weird direction cause the rest of the team was getting older and they were no longer legit contenders. The grit and grind era was coming to an end and maybe they could have considered rebuilding. However, the 2016-17 season was when Conley shut everybody up and proved that he was worth that contract. He put up career highs in points, field goal percentage, three-point percentage, his overall efficiency improved drastically. Unfortunately, he still didn't make the All-Star team or any All-NBA team. I really felt he should have made it this season. It was a huge snub. But his teammate Marc Gasol had a career season as well and he got in, so they just didn't have enough room for two Grizzlies. Also, it's really difficult to make it in as a guard, especially in the Western Conference. It's not a knock on Conley, but there are a lot of great guards out west and Conley is simply not as good as them. Throughout the season, Conley consistently performed at a high level, but with some injuries, the team wasn't doing so well. Enter the 2017 playoffs, and this is where everybody's perception of Conley changed. Previously, he was known to underperform in the playoffs, but against the Spurs in the first round, he played out of his mind. Averaging 25-7, played great defense, and he was insanely clutch down the stretch. It was by far the best playoff series of his career. However, the Grizzlies were still heavily outmatched and they lost in 6. With that being said, after the season was over, Conley proved all his doubters wrong. He definitely lived up to his contract, at least for that season, and he was expected to continue his great play and improve even more, maybe finally making an All-Star team or All-NBA team. Unfortunately, that still didn't happen because the following season saw Conley suffer an Achilles injury. While this was really bad for Conley, it was a blessing in disguise for the Grizzlies. Throughout the entire 2017-18 season, they were pretty much tanking, signing a bunch of D-leaguers, firing their coach, losing a ton of games. It was their typical tanking season. And because Conley was out for the season, it was really the best direction they could have gone, even if some other players didn't like it. At the end of the season, they were rewarded for their futility, grabbing the number 4 pick of the draft and taking Jaren Jackson. And now the future is looking bright, I think. I know that Mike Conley has become the go-to guy when people talk about underrated players, and he might have gotten to the point where everyone says he's so underrated that he's properly rated now. While it's true that he doesn't have any major accolades, it makes sense because he's simply not as good as other players at his position. Of course, playing in a small market doesn't help his popularity, but we should all appreciate how good he's been. As for the future of the Grizzlies, it's still very uncertain. They've been doing decently well, and as always, they're still flying under the radar. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been playing pretty well, but he's been picking up fouls like crazy. That's obviously going to get better as the year progresses, though. As of right now, the main focal points on the team are still Marc Gasol and Mike Conley. They're both 34 and 31 years old respectively, but they're still playing the same way they've played for the last 3 or 4 years. Although Conley hasn't been shooting the ball that well, and this might be a sign that his career is slowly going downhill. Which, to be honest, it's not surprising. I mean, very few players have come back successfully from an Achilles injury. Conley's playstyle, while it is very calculated and meticulous, he still relies a lot on athleticism. Before the season started, Conley was unsure about the direction of the team. He said, "It's different for me because for the last 8 years, I came into every season thinking we have a chance to win at a high level. This season, expectations are still try to be that playoff team, that team that comes out and really makes it tough on everybody. But it is an awkward year with so many teams getting so much better with different acquisitions they made in the offseason. And besides the NBA draft, the Grizzlies didn't sign anybody significant." From this quote, I feel like Conley hit the nail on the head. Even though the Grizzlies, when healthy, have been a dark horse contender for a long time, there are still many questions surrounding this team. Realistically, they'll never be able to tank if Conley and Gasol remain on the team. But also realistically, there's no way this team could win a title. They'd have to play their hearts out for a chance to even make the playoffs. This is not a good situation to be in, but for a small market team like Memphis, sometimes you can't afford to tank. If the team sucks and nobody shows up or watches the games, they might have to relocate again. That's why I don't think there's any chance the Grizzlies trade away their best players for picks, even if that's the best move. As for Conley, I think this is the start of the downswing of his career. At 31 years old, with an Achilles injury under his belts, there's very little chance he's gonna get that much better. Regardless, their future still depends on 19-year-old Jaren Jackson Jr. The last time the Grizzlies had a top 5 draft pick was in 2009, where they drafted Hasheem Thabeet, unfortunately, but let's not talk about that. Jackson already looks much better than Thabeet ever was. Anyway, that's all folks, that sums up the story of Mike Conley and the Memphis Grizzlies. Let me know your thoughts on Conley and the team's current situation. Thank you everyone so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.